Lu Qingqing looked up, a sense of comfort flashed in her eyes, but it then turned dull again. Fourth prince does not like me, it is a matter of marriage, the empress said smilingly, he has to take you as his concubine. But I will help you with this matter, so don't worry. She could deal with Murong Qing through Lu Qingqing. Therefore, how could she let a wild girl cause trouble in the manor and ruin her plan? Lu Qingqing lowered her gaze. She clenched her fists tightly, somewhat unhappy as she thought that she still needed to rely on the empress to marry fourth prince. However, she had no other choices. Without the empress' help, perhaps fourth prince would not even look at her anymore. Empress, but that girl, she pursed her lips. The prince can't let her go. If one day she becomes his concubine too, wouldn't she, concubine? The empress sneered. She doesn't have that qualification. She was afraid that that girl would bewitch Murong Qing if they let her stay in the manor. Then, it would be difficult for Lu Qingqing to get close to him, not to mention to harm him. Therefore, she would never let that woman stay. Qingqing, the emperor and I will handle this matter. Don't worry. I'll assign you to stay in the manor. Lu Qingqing's heart skipped a beat. Though her heart rejoiced, she was a bit hesitant. But I have not yet become his concubine. What others might say. Who in the world will dare to question my decision? Moreover, I've promised you, and they'll pick a date for you to get married. The empress smiled arrogantly. Lu Qingqing got up, half kneeling on the ground, and respectfully said, I'll obey your order. Marrying him was her lifelong dream. She did not care if someone would say something terrible behind her. As long as she could become his wife, it would be enough. Sister Gu, send the guest away. The empress got up and said calmly, go back and get ready. I will send someone to assist you tomorrow, me for extra chapters. Yes, empress. Lu Qingqing stood up from the floor and smiled as she answered. Sister Gu bowed and led Lu Qingqing the way out. When they walked out of the imperial garden, Sister Gu suddenly stopped and seemed like she wanted to say something but hesitated. Lu Qingqing confusedly turned to look at Sister Gu. Sister Gu, what's wrong? Young Lady Lu, there is something that I do not know if I can tell you. Sister, please tell me. Facing Sister Gu, Lu Qingqing's tone was gracious. She was the empress maid, and no one dared to offend her. I think the prince will not agree to marry you even if it were the emperor's order. I am afraid that if young Lady Lu still gets married to him, he will not touch you and will divorce you later. Hearing Sister Gu's words, Lu Qingqing's face suddenly reddened. Sister Gu, I am just telling you the truth. This is too much for such an outstanding woman like you to bear. Sister Gu sighed and smiled bitterly. Lu Qingqing bit her lip and fell silent. The empress could force the prince to marry her, but could she force him to be with her? However, a cold light flashed in Sister Gu's eyes. I have something that can help young lady, depending on whether you are willing to accept it or not. Lu Qingqing's gloomy face suddenly brightened after hearing those words. Sister Gu, I wonder what you are talking about. Young Lady Lu, Sister Gu cautiously placed a packet of medicine in Lu Qingqing's hand. This medicine is a strong one. Take it. Bring it to Fourth Prince Manor and give it to Fourth Prince. Then, needless to say, you will be able to achieve what you want. Lu Qingqing immediately understood what Sister Gus meant. She trembled, biting her lip, her eyes were full of hesitation. However, in the end, she still reached out and took medicine handed by Sister Gu. She had liked Fourth Prince for so long, how could she give up just like that? Therefore, she closed her eyes slowly, and after half a second, she opened them with a resolute gaze. Sister Gu, I know exactly what to do. Will this medicine be harmful to his body? Don't worry, young Lady Lu. It's not harmful in any way. Are you still having doubts about me? Sister Gu smiled faintly. I know young Lady Lu is a nice girl, and am afraid others might bully you there. Lu Qingqing pursed her lips. She lowered her gaze and fell silent. But, Sister Gu paused. Young lady, this matter must not be known by the Empress. The Empress is a decent person. If she knows, she would not allow you to do such a thing. I only do so because I feel sorry for you. Lu Qingqing's heart wavered, and she nodded slightly. I understand, Sister Gu. It's getting late. You should go back first. Sister Gu smiled and continued, go back and wait for the good news. Tomorrow, you will be going to Fourth Prince Manor. By then, the entire manor will be yours. Lu Qingqing was a bit stunned, but she did not speak more. She took a glance at Sister Gu and turned to leave. Her legs were somewhat quivering, and her delicate body appeared to be a little weak under the clear breeze. After Lu Qingqing left, the smile on Sister Gu's face also faded away. She turned around and walked back to the palace. From a distance, she saw the Empress sitting on the soft couch. She hurriedly went to her and greeted her respectfully. Empress, did you give her the medicine? The Empress picked up a grape and devoured it while asking expressionlessly. Sister Gu said, yes, it's already in young Lady Liu's hands. Well, did you tell her that I gave it to you, me for extra chapters? Empress, I told her that this matter must not be known by you. She does not know that it was you who gave the medicine to me. Sister Gu smiled as she reported. The Empress' face relaxed at that moment. She had asked the state preceptor to falsify the news that Flower King could cure the disease, just to lure Murong Qing to the Wolf King. Unexpectedly, the Wolf King did not eat him but instead followed him back to his manor. Now that Flower King was still in the palace, the state preceptor was anxious and uneasy. Even though he could still make up the reason that Flower King had not bloomed yet due to some delay, once Flower King bloomed, his lie would definitely be exposed. In that case, she would certainly be dragged down as well. Therefore, she had to kill Murong Qing before that happened. If he died, Flower King would naturally be useless. Lu Qingqing. This woman is foolish. It's such a waste if we don't use her to destroy Murong Qing, the Empress sneered. Sister Gu hesitated for a moment before asking, Empress, you said before that Princess Feng Riching from Luyun Kingdom will be coming here and might want to take young Lady Lu as her disciple. Since we have asked Lu Qingqing to do this, what will happen to her later? Lu Qingqing was not witty and looked frail, but she was an excellent girl, and all people here adored her. I intentionally said this to the Emperor. Back then, I know that the Emperor was satisfied with Lu Qingqing, but he had also picked some other women. If we get the other girls to go into Fourth Prince's manor, we may not have one as obedient as Lu Qingqing. The Empress paused and continued, secondly, even if it is true, it doesn't matter. I believe that you will not expose this matter. After all, you and your family are in my hands. She played with her fingers and smiled coldly. This meant that if her plan had been exposed, Sister Gu would be the one who would be the scapegoat. However, as the Empress' servant, there was nothing she could do. Sister Gu lowered her pale face. She had followed the Empress from the beginning, and now she could no longer escape. Moreover, we can use that wild girl from the prince's manor. The Empress narrowed her eyes and sneered. Don't worry. As long as Murong Qing dies, no one else can harm me. Sister Gu lowered her head and did not speak. She froze, and her body was slightly trembling. The next day, loud noises awakened Nan Qiyu. She rubbed her eyes impatiently and frowned. Who is making such a ruckus outside? So noisy. A young man lay on the ground, and after hearing Nan Kai's words, a hint of coldness flashed across his handsome face. "I'll go out and take a look." "No, I'll go with you." Nan Kai's face darkened, seemingly very upset. Ah, Bao looked up, bewildered as it stared at Nan Chiyu in a daze. People with wake-up calls are not good to mess with, especially women. Me for extra chapters. Nan Chiyu opened the door and followed the sound to the front yard. From a distance, she heard Murong Qing's angry voice, a voice that made Nan Chiyu freeze. Ever since she met Murong Qing, he had always been gentle and good-tempered, never saying a word out loud. It was the first time she saw him in this state. She did not know who had angered him. If a patient were angry, it would only be detrimental to his recovery. She also wanted to leave this place earlier, yet she had to fulfill her promise. So, after seeing Murong Qing so mad, her little face sank again. In the front yard, Lu Qingqing was somewhat speechless. Her small face was pale due to panic. It seemed that she was also frightened by how furious Murong Qing was. She bit her lip as aggrieved tears swirled in her eyes and almost fell. "Who permitted you to bring her into my manor? And with these clothes? What exactly does this mean? Whose orders are these?" Murong Qing's face darkened as he angrily looked at the group of eunuchs standing in front of him. The eunuch was also frightened, but he still spoke, "We're only following the Empress' order. The Empress said that fourth prince is ready to marry young Lady Lu. Both young Lady Lu and fourth prince still have to nurture your feelings, so the Empress has asked young Lady Lu stay in fourth prince's manor first." Murong Qing's veins bulged on his forehead, and he clenched his fists angrily, obviously exasperated by the actions of these people. "Lu Qingqing, you are not married yet, but you can't wait to get into my manor. How can you be so cheap?" Each of Murong Qing's words were like sharp swords, ruthlessly thrust into her heart, making her hurt and bloody. However, she could not leave, so she stood still and dumbfounded. After all, she had liked him for so many years. How could she be willing to give up like that? "Lu Qingqing, I told you to leave. Didn't you hear me?" Murong Qing looked furious, full of rage. He looked even more flustered as he clenched his fists tighter when he saw Nan Chiyu walking toward them. Lu Qingqing looked up and saw Nan Chiyu sitting nearby, watching them. She then slowly turned and saw a young man next to her. The young man's beauty was so mesmerizing that it took her breath away, but she then relaxed and smiled shyly. It looks like Nan Kai's relationship with the young man is not ordinary, but Murong Qing still allows the young man to stay here for her, so who exactly is being cheap? Lu Qingqing raised her head firmly and said, "Fourth prince, it was the Empress who asked me to come here, and I did not dare to disobey her. So I'm sorry if I make you uncomfortable. It was the Empress' order, and even if Murong Qing was angry, it was impossible to throw her out just like that. As long as she could stay, she had a chance to win his heart. When she became his legal wife, the prince would no longer be able to reject her." Murong Qing's veins were bulging on his forehead. He pointed at Lu Qingqing angrily. "I told you to get out. Didn't you hear me? Get out of here immediately. You're not welcomed in my manor." Lu Qingqing pursed her lips, perhaps she was used to being scolded, so she directly commanded the servants to bring her clothes in. Seeing Lu Qingqing's actions, Murong Qing's fists clenched tighter, and the anger in his eyes was monstrous. Me for extra chapters. "Fourth prince, I know you don't like me, but do you dare to go against the Empress?" "I wouldn't dare," Lu Qingqing bit her lip. "The Empress ordered me to come here. If I don't come, I will only drag down the whole Lu family. Please understand me." Murong Qing had not yet recovered. He was so furious this time that he started coughing violently. The coughing made Lu Qingqing panic. She stepped forward and tried to help Murong Qing, but he raised his hand and pushed her away. Lu Qingqing, I don't like you. I would rather not marry my whole life than marry a woman I don't like. You will suffer if you marry me. The thought of spending the rest of his life with someone he did not love was difficult for him. This feeling was not what he wanted. He would rather die alone than marry someone he did not love. Otherwise, what was the meaning of life? Murongqing turned and gazed at Nan Qiyu. His eyes softened, even his pale face had recovered a bit. Nan Qiyu saw Murongqing looking at her. She almost choked on the grapes in her mouth. Fortunately, the young man hurriedly patted her back to help her swallow the mouthful of grapes. Why are you looking at me? Nan Qiyu was baffled. If you don't like her, no one can force you. But if you like her, just marry her. So why are you looking at me like that? She had always felt that marriage was a matter that needed to be decided by herself. If he did not like her, he should reject her. No one could force him. Now that Murongqing kept looking at her, could it be that he wanted her to help him make a decision? Nan Qiyu placed her hand on her cheek and seemed to be in deep thought. Father will kick any girl who dares to get close to him away, but mother, she's gentle to girls. Murongqing is a man. He should be the same as father. He would only keep the girl he likes for life. Nan Qiyu did not understand Murongqing's gaze, but the young man standing next to her clearly understood what was on Murongqing's mind. This guy has a feeling for Xia Xia. I'll never allow him to get what he wants. Xia Xia, it's still early. Let's go back and continue sleeping? The young man smiled stunningly. Nan Qiyu yawned. Indeed. I have woken up too early in the morning. Let's go back to sleep. After she said this, she stood up from the stool, held the bowl of fruit in her hand, and walked toward her room. Lu Qingqing sneered. Fourth prince, did you hear that? Does it mean that they are sleeping together? Murongqing's heart fiercely seized, and he glanced at Lu Qingqing coldly. Shut up. I don't understand. She obviously doesn't like you. And now she's even having an affair with another man. Why do you have to be so bitter? Now that they are sleeping together, don't you have any dignity? Dignity? Murongqing sneered and looked at Lu Qingqing with contempt in his gaze. What about you moving in here? Dignity? Ridiculous. Lu Qingqing has even ignored her reputation and moved to my manor. Now she's still talking about dignity. Me for extra chapters. And Nan Ming is just a wolf. He can't be with maiden Xia Xia. Murongqing comforted himself, and it made him feel a lot better. He did not look at Lu Qingqing again. He simply turned his back to her. I hope you can consider leaving the imperial family. I will never marry you in this life. They can force me to let you get into my manor, but they can never force or urge me to bring you to my bridal chamber. If I do not want to touch you, then no one can do anything. If you have to marry me, it will only be a lifetime of widowhood. After saying that, Murongqing walked away. He did not even so much as glance at Lu Qingqing, leaving her standing alone in the courtyard. Lu Qingqing stared at Murongqing's back as he left. Her fists clenched tightly, and her breathing grew heavy with pain. She had come this far, and there was no turning back. She had to continue moving forward, there was no room for her to turn back. She slowly opened her hand and stared at a packet of medicine powder. Lu Qingqing seemed to grow more determined. In these 2 days, Lu Qingqing kept trying to find ways to approach Murongqing, but Murongqing refused to see her, shutting himself in the study room and never wanting to come out. If she could not get close to Murongqing, she could not give him the medicine. Then, there was no way to get him completely. In contrast to the anxious Lu Qingqing, it had been boring to Nan Qiyu these past 2 days. With her hand placed on her cheek, she sat on a tree while looking down at the young man who was standing under the tree and asked, "Ah Ming, has the flower bloomed yet? It's too boring here. I can't wait any longer. I want to leave." "Then, should we leave tomorrow?" The young man looked up and smiled. He smiled brightly, and his beauty could steal people's hearts. However, this young man only smiled in front of Nan Chiyu. Other times, he would always put on a cold expression, ignoring everyone around him. Nan Chiyu pouted. "But I've promised to stay. What if I ask Ah Bao to stay here?" "Ah Bao can go back after the prince has recovered, and if he cannot recover, I will ask my mother to help him." She would stay, but not because she was worried about Murong Qing. Murong Qing had helped her. No matter what, she must help him back. She just doubted whether Flower King would really work. If she were still here when Murong Qing failed to recover, at least there was still a way for her to help him, thus returning the favor to him. However, the days in Chongqing Kingdom were just too dull, and she could not wait any longer. "All right, let Ah Bao stay, and we'll leave first." The young man smirked as he looked at Ah Bao lying under the sun not far away. Ah Bao seemed to have sensed that something was up and slowly raised its head. It looked at Nan Ming doubtfully with its onyx-like eyes. "Why do I feel that this wolf is scheming against me again?" Nan Ming's gaze made it tremble a little. However, soon the young man turned and looked at Nan Chiyu. The light in his eyes was so gentle. "Then, should we pack up and leave tonight?" Nan Chiyu was slightly stunned and shook her head. "It's getting late. Let's do it tomorrow. Besides, Ah Bao has already told my mother about my whereabouts, and I don't know whether she will come to pick me up or not. If she came, it would prove that her father had forgiven her." "All right," the young man smiled faintly. "Me for extra chapters." Not far away, Lu Qingqing looked at the young girl coldly. She did not understand why the prince would not let the girl go when she already had another man by her side. Even more, he had lowered his dignity to snatch a woman from another man and actually allowed that man to stay in his manor for her. Ridiculous. Perhaps the Empress and the Emperor still do not know about this. Lu Qingqing took a final look at the two people in front of her and turned to leave. The most important thing she had to do now was to become his concubine first. After that, the prince would no longer think about that wild woman. When she got to her room, Lu Qingqing took medicine out of her hand and carefully sprinkled it into the soup on the table. She picked up the soup and walked toward the door. Instead of going directly to the study room, she pulled a servant and asked with a smile, "Could you please help me to send this soup to Fourth Prince?" In the past 2 days, Lu Qingqing did not do anything. But she had taken care of all the manor. The Empress sent her, so everyone here had to respect her. The servant looked at the soup that Lu Qingqing handed to her and was a bit confused. "Why don't you send it to the prince yourself, miss?" Lu Qingqing said with a bitter smile, "He doesn't like to see me. If he knew that it was I who made the soup, he would not even want to taste it. I have broiled this soup for hours, and I don't want to waste it." She rubbed her fingers gently and hid them behind her back again. The servant took a look at her, and only then did she notice that Lu Qingqing's hands were burned. The servant's heart ached. Why would the prince be so kind to a woman who didn't like him and let go of a nice girl like young lady Lu? Young lady is a good woman. No man would refuse a nice girl like her. Unfortunately, she has fallen in love with Fourth Prince. Young lady Lu, don't worry. I will definitely send this soup to Fourth Prince. Lu Qingqing smiled brightly. Please, but don't let Fourth Prince know that I sent it. Otherwise, I'm afraid that he may not drink this soup. I understand. The servant bowed to Lu Qingqing and retreated. The smile on Lu Qingqing's face gradually disappeared. She lightly pursed her lips and gazed at the departing servant. This matter had come to this point. There was no turning back. She took one last look in the direction of the servant, turned around, walked toward the courtyard, and gradually disappeared under the sunlight. Murong-Qing sat in the study room, rubbing his temples. A book was placed in front of him, and he was reading it very seriously. The study room door was pushed open, and the servant came in with a bowl of soup. Murong-Qing said without raising his head, "Just put it here." Upon hearing this, the servant put the soup down and turned around to leave. After she left, the study room was quiet again. Murong-Qing was in a bad mood these days because of Lu Qingqing and had even shut himself in the study room, not taking even a single step out of his room. He was a little thirsty from reading the book and suddenly thought about the soup on the table. The soup was still a little warm. He poured himself a small portion and sipped it gently. The soup today tasted a little strange, but he could not seem to quite put a finger on what was off. It was also not quite the same as usual. He thought the people working in the kitchen might have used a new recipe perhaps. Murong-Qing did not think much about it. He drank all of the soup. Me for extra chapters. When the soup entered his belly, Murong-Qing felt his heart was a bit hot and it felt as if something was stinging his heart, a feeling that made him no longer able to focus on reading. He clenched his hand tightly around his chest. It was so painful, making it difficult even to breathe. Suddenly, he spurted a mouthful of blood to the ground. It hurts. Murong-Qing became so weak and gradually fell to the ground. His breathing grew heavy, his throat was hurt, and his vision became blurry. At that moment, a delicate and beautiful small face emerged in his mind. If I die today, I'll never have the chance to see Maiden Xia Xia again. And he could no longer see the smile that brightened his life. He had driven everyone out of the study room and did not allow anyone to enter. Now, he choked when he wanted to open his mouth to shout for help. He grabbed his chest tightly and wanted to call for help, but he failed to do so. He then turned and saw the bowl of soup on the table. Murong-Qing trembled and reached out his hand, took the soup bowl, and smashed it to the ground hard. Murong-Qing did not allow anyone to come in and disturb him, but there were still guards outside the study room. The sound of the shattered bowl caught the attention of the guards outside. The guards rushed in and saw Murong-Qing collapsing to the ground. All of them were shocked and panicking. Go and inform the emperor that fourth prince is dying. The entire study room was in chaos. Some people rushed to the palace to report, and some people went to see Murong-Qing. Murong-Qing gradually closed his eyes and lay on the cold ground. Not far from the study room, Lu Qingqing anxiously walked back and forth, feeling a little uneasy. Her heart beat faster as if something was about to happen. Will fourth prince drink the soup? Will he find out that I made the soup for him? Just as Lu Qingqing was getting very anxious, a voice outside that was even more anxious than she felt came, bringing earth-shattering news. Fourth prince is in trouble. He has been poisoned. He's dying. What? Lu Qingqing panicked, her legs went weak, and she almost fell to the ground. What do you mean fourth prince has been poisoned? If someone discovered that she had given the soup to fourth prince, she would be doomed. Fourth prince was poisoned and needed an antidote. However, why did everyone say he was dying? Lu Qingqing held on to a tree to stabilize her body. She did not have time to think about it and hurriedly ran toward the prince's room. She saw many servants and guards outside the room from a distance, and all of them looked panicked. The sense of fear came up her chest again, causing her body to tremble a little. She stumbled forward and raised her hand to push open the door. She then saw Murong-Qing lying on the bed with a pale face. An elder sat next to Murong-Qing, and he was the physician of fourth prince's manor, who had rushed over after hearing the news that the prince was unconscious. He frowned, and his face was a bit pale. A moment later, he stood up and closed his eyes in grief and only opened them after a long time. Go and tell the Emperor and the Empress that the prince has been poisoned and is dying. Me for extra chapters. Poisoned. Lu Qingqing almost collapsed to the ground, her gaze sad and painful as she looked at the silent young man on the bed. She felt like a sword stabbed her heart fiercely. Painful and regretful. Sister Gu said the medicine would not harm him. But has it poisoned him? No. Impossible. I don't believe it. The Emperor and the Empress hurried over. They went into the room and saw the unconscious Murong Qing. They suddenly became furious. What is going on with Qing'er? The elder knelt on the ground. Emperor, please forgive me, the prince is poisoned. I can't help him. Poisoned. This word made the Emperor almost collapse to the ground. Fortunately, the Empress held him up in time. He stood up straight, his forehead veins jumped, and his face was full of anger. Investigate who has poisoned Qing'er. After hearing these words, Lu Qingqing's face grew paler. She trembled and panicked. If the Emperor found out that Murong Qing became this way after he drank her soup, no, it has nothing to do with me. That medicine was from Sister Gu. I just want to be his woman. The Empress looked at Lu Qingqing and frowned. Lu Qingqing was good at everything but not at pretending. Fortunately, the Emperor was too busy with Qing'er now and did not notice her expression. Otherwise, she might have been suspected of her actions. At times like this, she should pretend to be as if nothing was wrong so that she would not be suspected as the one who poisoned the prince. Emperor, the Empress' eyes were filled with grief. The people in Fourth Prince Manor all are your men. Who would poison Qing'er? All are my men. These few words made the Emperor realize something. That's right. There's a stranger in my son's manor. No one knew where that girl came from. Maybe she's a spy from an enemy kingdom, deliberately relying on her beauty to get close to Qing'er. Guard, arrest that woman for me. If she has poisoned him, I will not spare even one of her family. Murong Qing was his son. He would never allow anyone to hurt him even a bit. Lu Qingqing was confused. She did not understand why this matter would involve that woman. But she lowered her gaze and gritted her teeth. She had never lied before and not even had an intention of poisoning others. However, this time, she had no choice. If the Emperor knew it was because of her, even if she did not poison him, the Emperor still would not let the Lu family go. For the Lu family's sake, there were many things that she had no choice but to keep silent. Emperor, Lu Qingqing's eyes were filled with tears as she raised her eyes to look at the Emperor. It was my fault. The Emperor turned to Lu Qingqing and frowned. What do you mean by that, me for extra chapters? In his eyes, there was still a wave of unresolved anger. Lu Qingqing's face was full of misery. Fourth Prince's meals are all prepared by the people in Fourth Prince's manor, but today I prepared soup for him, and all the servants in the manor knew about this. Fourth Prince refused to see me, so I got the servants to give it to him instead. This matter, sooner or later, could not be hidden unless they killed the servants who saw her prepare the soup. However, from childhood until now, she could not even trample an ant to death. So how could she try to kill someone? Therefore, she could only tell the story herself first. The Emperor was even more furious. You mean, you poisoned Qing'er? I love him. How could I do that? Lu Qingqing's voice was tinged with tears. But Maiden Xia Xia came to my room today. When I came back to get the soup, I bumped into her. At first, I did not care. I thought if she wanted to harm someone, at most, it would be me. I did not even think that she would want to make a move on Fourth Prince. The emperor became even more furious hearing that, and he clenched his fists tightly, making them crack. The anger in his eyes was as if it could burn the world down. In any case, I caused this. If I had paid more attention, this would not have happened. Emperor, if fourth prince really doesn't wake up this time, I'm willing to go with him. Even if we are not yet married, in my mind, he is already my husband in this life. I certainly will not have second thoughts. She passionately kowtowed several times. She looked very determined. The empress then secretly looked at Lu Qingqing appreciatively. When she looked back at the emperor, the light in his eyes dispersed, replaced by that full of grief. Emperor, this matter has nothing to do with Lu Qingqing. She has also been framed by someone. Moreover, Lu Qingqing is such a good girl. I believe that this time, Qing'er can clearly see some people's true nature and understand who is truly for him. If you punish Lu Qingqing, I'm afraid that Qing'er won't forgive you when he wakes up. The emperor's face darkened. In this matter, Lu Qingqing was indeed responsible for believing that others have a harmless heart, and yet the culprit was the woman who had once seduced Qing'er. I can distinguish who is right and who is wrong clearly. That woman dares to treat Qing'er like this. I will not forgive her. Inside the room, Nan Qiyu lazily stretched her back. She rubbed her sleepy eyes, looked at the young man lying on the beam in confusion, and asked, "What time is it? Why is it so noisy outside?" Nan Ming frowned. His handsome and stunning features were radiant. As he was looking at Nan Qiyu, his eyes carried a gentle light. It was something that would never be there in normal times. Just at this moment, the door of the room was suddenly kicked open by someone. The light in Nan Ming's eyes disappeared. His pair of beautiful eyes turned cold. Nan Kai's small face sank. She had never been at peace since she came to Chongqing Kingdom. "Take them away," the guard, as the head of the group, said coldly. Nan Ming jumped down from the beam. He looked at the group of people coldly. Murderous intent spread out from the bottom of his heart. However, Nan Qiyu was quite calm. She walked down from the bed, slowly walked toward the group of guards, and asked expressionlessly, "What do you want?" "Humph," the guards coldly snorted. "You are suspected of plotting against our fourth prince." "I am here by order of the emperor." "Fourth prince?" Nan Qiyu was faintly shocked, apparently frozen by the guard's words. Something happened to Murongqing. She took a deep breath and said, "Ah Ming, let's go and see what's happened." Perhaps because of Nan Kai's words, the murderous aura that filled his body gradually disappeared. Ah Bao leaped up from the ground and jumped into Nan Kai's arms. Its cat eyes slightly narrowed, a hint of coldness flashed in them. The people of Chongqing Kingdom are really daring to make a move on little princess. They're asking for death. After all, Murongqing had helped Nan Qiyu. Nan Qiyu did not want him to die, so she intended to see him. Me for extra chapters. However, the emperor's order was for them to tie Nan Qiyu up, so how could the guards just allow her to walk past them, untied? However, then, just as they were about to make a move, a powerful force came crashing down, sending all the guards who were trying to get close to Nan Qiyu flying away. Nan Ming walked slowly to Nan Kai's side, smiling and holding her hand. He smiled, and there was a gentle light in his eyes once again. "Let's go." The young man's hand was warm, so warm that Nan Qiyu's heart trembled. She wanted to take her hand back, but the young man's grip was so tight that even when she used force, she still could not pull her hand back and could only let him hold her hand toward the door, while in the bedroom. The atmosphere was enveloped by grief and pain. The emperor's worried gaze was fixed upon Murongqing on the bed. The imperial doctors were all kneeling on the floor. Their faces were pale. Looking at Murongqing, the grief on the emperor's face intensified until, after the two hand-in-hand figures entered, all his grief turned into anger. This damn girl is the woman Qing'er want to marry. Now, she has brought another man into the manor and dares to poison Qing'er. Is such a woman like she worthy of him? The emperor and the empress also could not understand why Murongqing rejected such a good girl as Lu Qingqing and fell in love with this wild girl instead. She did not seem to have any other merits besides her good looks. After walking in, Nan Qiyu stopped, and she frowned. Her gaze fell upon Murongqing on the bed while her fingers lightly stroked her chin. Ah Ming, he is so pitiful. His illness is not yet cured, and he is poisoned again. Nan Ming looked at Nan Qiyu with a smile in his eyes. Well, it's quite miserable. Hearing Nan Kai's words, the emperor was even more furious. This culprit, now she still dared to gloat here. How dare you, he shouted angrily, with a ruthlessness in his eyes. Little girl, just now, Lu Qingqing said that you took advantage of her absence and secretly poisoned Qing'er. What exactly is your purpose for doing so? Nan Qiyu was slightly surprised. She tilted her head to look at Lu Qingqing and blinked slightly. She initially thought that Lu Qingqing was just too fond of Murongqing, but she did not expect Lu Qingqing to lie to this extent. Answer me immediately. The emperor's eyes were full of fury. Otherwise, you will definitely be executed. Executed. Nan Qiyu turned to the emperor, and suddenly, she smiled. That smile was brilliant, like sunshine. It was hard to ignore her beauty. The emperor had to admit that this little girl was indeed good-looking. Especially for naive men, he was easily compelled by her smile. This was why Murongqing could be so crazy for her. You want to execute me? She pointed to her nose and asked again. Or what? This time it was the empress who opened her mouth first. She smiled coldly. Little girl, I admire your courage. You dared to break into Fourth Prince's manor and poison him, but you are still weak. You did it secretly, but there is always someone who can detect it. If you tell your purpose, I might still consider keeping your dead body completely. The empress lifted her chin. Her tone was condescending and overbearing. The coldness in Nan Ming's eyes flashed demonically. In his eyes, there was already a wave of unsuppressed anger. However, Nan Qiyu gave Nan Ming's hand a pump. Me for extra chapters. The young girl's warm hand gradually calmed the young man's manic heart, and he stood aside obediently. Although my father has always disliked me since childhood, he has never dared to touch even a single finger of mine. So what are you guys thinking? You want to execute me? Nan Qiyu raised her pretty little face, which slightly sunken. The emperor was furious and waved his hand fiercely. Guard, seize her. With that order, the guards once again headed toward Nan Qiyu. The murderous intent in Nan Ming's eyes became even more intense, and he glanced at the guards surrounding them coldly. These guards were all stunned, and they could not help but stop. His eyes were so fierce, which made the guards tremble. This feeling made them no longer dare to take a step closer. There were panic and dismay in their eyes. Why are you guys still standing there? Hurry up. As soon as he thought of Murongqing's possible death, he wanted to deal with this girl first to avenge Murongqing. But, Nan Qiyu glanced at the people present coldly. The aura surrounding her body was so powerful that it made people somewhat scared of her. Initially, I had wanted to come and save Murongqing, but looking at this, it seems that you guys don't need me to save him. Ah Ming, let's go home. Initially, she wanted to leave tomorrow. But now, she did not want to stay even for an hour. Xia, the unconscious person on the bed seemed to have sensed something. He murmured but could only make a weak sound, still with his eyes tightly closed. Murongqing's voice made Nan Qiyu stop for a while, but eventually, she walked toward the door. Xia Xia, don't go. Murongqing's voice carried hope, but there was no way to make Nan Qiyu stay any longer. Ah, Bao. Nan Qiyu lowered her gaze and said, kill whoever tries to stop me. Ah, Bao lifted its gaze. Its eyes slightly narrowed as it looked at the people around it warningly. The group of guards ignored the cat. What made them scared was the young man who was following Nan Qiyu. This young man looked very strong and was not such an easy person to deal with. The good thing was that Nan Ming did not have the desire to continue making a move. He was afraid that if he attacked them now, it would not be as simple as before. It would undoubtedly make the flesh of these people directly explode. So bloody that it would easily scare Xia Xia. Therefore, he decided to let go and let Bao take care of it. Why are you guys still standing there? The emperor was furious. If you don't do it, you are considered disobeying my orders and will be executed. This sentence made the group of guards no longer dare to retreat, so they rushed toward Nan Qiyu. Nan Qiyu pursed her lips and did not say much. She turned her back on the group behind her, her dress fluttering. At the same time, Bao also raised its head. A red light flashed in its eyes. It leaped up, scratching the guard's neck with its sharp claws. Blood splashed out, and the guards fell to the ground silently. Nan Qiyu looked back at the emperor expressionlessly. I came here and wanted to wait for Murongqing's condition to get better before leaving. After all, he once helped me back then. My mother taught me to be grateful, but since you do not want me to stay, I'll leave. As for Murongqing, she paused and smiled coldly. You should really look into it. How was he poisoned? Me for extra chapters. The emperor was stunned. Did the girl mean that she did not poison Murongqing? However, the witnesses were all there. Lu Qingqing saw it with her eyes. Was it false? The actual person who gave the poison to Murongqing had no reason to shelter her. So, besides this girl, he could not think of anyone else who would do so. Murongqing treated people with kindness and modesty. He did not make enemies with people, so there was no reason for anyone to harm him. You don't have to demonize people here, the emperor sneered. No matter what you say today, you must pay for Qing'er's life. If he manages to live, I might not pass your death sentence. But if he dies, you must pay for his life. Nan Qiyu pursed her lips and said no more, turning her back to the emperor. I would like to see if you can stop us. The imperial city of Chongqing Kingdom. Outside of the city gate, Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian stopped in their tracks. They stared at the city gate and slowly stepped inside. The people in Chongqing Kingdom were quite familiar with these two figures. One was extremely beautiful, in a red dress, while the other one was as handsome as jade, like an immortal with a cold face. Therefore, when Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian stepped into the city gate, the people sent by the emperor of Chongqing Kingdom had already recognized the two of them. Their eyes lit up, and they rushed to greet them. Excuse me, are the two of you Princess Feng Ruqing and State Preceptor Nan Xian of Luyan Kingdom? Feng Ruqing frowned. She looked at the guard in front of her and nodded. Emisham. The guard was happy, and he was even more respectful. The emperor heard that the two of you were coming and has ordered me to welcome you. Is anything that you need me to help you with? It was the first time he met Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian. The thought that these two people's fame was known on the mainland made him tremble a little from excitement. Oh, Feng Ruqing was a bit heedless. I would like to go to Fourth Prince's Manor. Do you know where it is? The guard was shocked for a moment. Feng Ruqing came here to find the Fourth Prince. He could not help but look even more delighted. Princess Ruqing, State Preceptor Nan Xian, please follow me. Enriching was glad that someone could lead the way, so she did not have to bother finding it by herself. Therefore, she followed him with Nan Xian and headed toward Fourth Prince Manor. Fourth Prince Manor, a group of guards had fallen in a pool of blood. Ah Bao elegantly licked the blood on its paws and looked at these people disdainfully. The mockery in its eyes was intense. You, the emperor's face darkened. His gaze was filled with rage. How dare you? Not only did you poison Qing'er, but you even dare to disobey my orders. In this Chongqing kingdom, no one had ever dared to be so reckless with him. Nan Qiyu suddenly seemed to think of something. She stopped for a while and turned to Lu Qingqing behind her. Lu Qingqing's body quivered slightly. She stood up from the ground and took a few steps back, panicked. Her body trembled, and her gaze was full of fear. She was terrified. She did not expect this cat to be so strong. She suddenly thought about when she first came to Fourth Prince Manor, and her servant had wanted to throw this cat out. That gave her goosebumps as she froze. Unbridled. The emperor was furious, and his gaze was stern as he looked at Nan Qiyu. Me for extra chapters. Nan Qiyu looked at Lu Qingqing smilingly. However, her eyes were cold. I don't know why you want to trap me, and I will never forgive anyone who tried to trap me. Lu Qingqing's face turned pale, her lips trembled. The panic in her eyes increased, and her heart palpitated even more. But, Nan Qiyu crooked her small head, smiling, I also admire the people of Chongqing Kingdom. A group of blind who try every possible way to marry you to Murongqing. Although I do not like Murongqing romantically, at the very least, I still considered him my friend. So, I sympathize with him, being so victimized by you, yet others still want to let you marry him. Lu Qingqing's lips turned pale. Nan Qiyu was still young, but she had always made her feel a little uncomfortable. She felt like she wanted to turn around and escape from Nan Qiyu immediately. However, she was unable to move. It was as if her feet were rooted in the ground. Her legs were trembling, but she could not even take a step back. Little girl. The emperor was furious, and he sneered, Young Lady Lu is not as simple as you think. She is my approved daughter-in-law. Of course, I'll choose to believe her, and she has another identity. They said that Feng Ruching of Luyun Kingdom would come soon. Empress is right. She has gone to many places to gather female disciples. Considering she will come here, it must be for the same reason. Lu Qingqing is the most excellent girl in Chongqing Kingdom, and she is even famous in other kingdoms. Besides her, he could not think of anyone else who had such talent. Bang! Nan Qiyu lifted her leg and kicked Lu Qingqing away. The crowd was stunned. The kick caused Lu Qingqing's abdomen to rise in pain. The emperor's face darkened. This girl does not even respect me as the emperor of this kingdom. What was even more shocking for him was that her kick was too harsh and rough. Lu Qingqing was quite strong, but she seemed to have no room for resistance under Nan Kai's kick. Of course, it was also possible that she was caught off guard, making Lu Qingqing momentarily did not expect her to do that. I've never hit anyone before, and you're the first. Nan Qiyu tilted her chin, looking somewhat arrogant. Nan Ming's gaze was always fixed upon Nan Qiyu. He smiled proudly as he saw such an arrogant expression on the little girl's face. Nan Ming, let's go. She did not like killing people or seeing blood. However, Lu Qingqing had just framed her, and she would not let her go easily. Yet, she did not like to do the dirty work herself. Just like these guards who wanted to stop her, she would still instruct Bao to settle them. It was just that. She did not like to let her hands be stained with blood. It made her feel too dirty as it could not be washed clean and would remain on her hands for life. The smell of blood even made her a little uncomfortable. Emperor! Emperor! Suddenly, a voice filled with excitement came. Princess Feng Ruching of Lu Yun Kingdom and State Preceptor Nan Xian are here. That sentence not only made the people in the room excited, but even Nan Kai's expression also froze. She hurriedly rushed out and took a glance at the familiar figure in a red dress. At that moment, Nan Kai's eyes welled up with tears. She froze, and her beautiful little face was also covered in tears. Mother! She has finally come to bring me home. Father has forgiven me for extra chapters. I can go home now. Her tears were like long rivers, pouring down her face. She wiped them hard but somehow could not stop crying. The Emperor was happier. The person with the most powerful ability whom he knew very well had come. I heard that she could revive people from the dead. Fortunately, she's here. Does it mean that Qing'er can be saved? The crowd walked out slowly with Nan Qiyu. The Empress had seen this famous woman countless times in portraits, but now was the first time she saw her in person. She found that this woman was more beautiful than the portraits. The man next to her had a gentle face, but all his gentleness was reserved only for one woman. A faint smile played upon his handsome and immortal-like face. But that smile disappeared when he saw Nan Qiyu, which turned his face dark. The Empress noticed the changes on his face. By looking at State Preceptor Nan Xian's expression, he seems to hate this little girl. It looks like Hod is helping me. This little girl has dared to disobey me back then. This time, the person who will destroy this little girl has finally appeared. However, before the Empress could speak, Nan Xian moved so quickly and stood before Nan Qiyu. His handsome and cold face was now filled with rage. Who did this? His gaze was cold, and there seemed to be a shocking storm in his eyes that could make people tremble in fear. I will ask again. The blood on your body. Who did this? With every word he said, the temperature around him fell by a degree. It was so frightening that no one present dared to speak. The Empress looked at Nan Qiyu and Nan Ming with a horrified gaze. At that moment, they finally felt that something was wrong. However, it was difficult to put a finger on just what it was. Lu Qingqing bit her lip hard. Her face was pale, and her body trembled hard. The feeling of uneasiness was growing stronger, almost devouring her. Ah Bao. The person who said this was Feng Ruching. She had a cold and sullen expression as she slowly stepped in. Is this what you, the frontier, are capable of? Ah Bao's body inexplicably shivered. Its gaze was blank as if it did not know what it had done wrong. Princess and State Preceptor are angry, that, Bao trembled. I've protected her well. Its little princess ate well and slept well. Except for the Wolf King's extra companionship, nothing had changed since being in Princess Manor. Feng Ruching looked around Nan Kai's body and did not find any wound. Instead, she saw her body stained with blood. Her face turned cold and sank again. This blood, Nan Kai's little face was red. It is not mine. It's Ah Bao's blood. When it was fighting just now, the blood had accidentally splashed onto me. Feng Ruching sighed in relief, smiled, and extended her arms. Nan Qiyu was excited and bounced over to her mother. Feng Ruching smiled and caught the little girl's tiny body in her arms, hugging her tightly. The Empress and others suddenly froze. Their eyes were bigger than the copper tomb, so shocked that their whole faces turned pale with panic in their eyes. What is the relationship between this wild girl and Feng Ruching? At first, seeing Nan Xian so worried about her, they had also misunderstood that Nan Xian and the little girl might have a relationship. However, all people knew that Princess Feng Ruqing could not tolerate other women, and State Preceptor Nan Xian had always listened to her. So they remained silent, waiting for what would happen to Nan Qiyu later. However, this scene made their brains buzz and their minds blank. The Empress froze, and even her breathing grew heavy. Me for extra chapters. She clenched her fists tightly, and her face was full of panic and confusion. Mother, Nan Qiyu smiled brightly. I know that father will forgive me. Now you can take me home. Father. Mother. The Empress, who was still full of panic, instantly turned ashen after hearing this name, and her heart stopped beating. Lu Qingqing shook her head and stepped backward. She could not believe what she was seeing. Feng Ruqing is Xia Xiao's mother. But I thought her family name was Xia. Impossible, absolutely impossible. The Emperor's face changed dramatically. He stiffly turned his head, and his gaze fell upon Lu Qingqing. Lu Qingqing had said before. Xia sneaked into the room and poisoned Murong Qing. She said that Xia might be a spy sent by other kingdoms to harm the Chongqing kingdom prince. However, Lu Qingqing was right about one thing. She was indeed from another kingdom. But that was Lu Yun Kingdom. All the kingdoms in Sangyu mainland were affiliated with Lu Yun Kingdom. If Lu Yun Kingdom wanted to start a war, it was only a matter of words. Why would they go and poison fourth prince? Was it necessary for them to do such a thing? Lu Qingqing trembled hard, unable to say a word. She was scared, and her whole face was pale. It was only after a long time that she regained her senses and knelt in front of the Emperor with a thud, her voice choked with tears. Emperor, it was Sister Gu. It was Sister Gu who gave the medicine to me. She said that this medicine, it would make fourth prince fall in love with me. I love him so much. So, I listened to Sister Gu. I beg for your mercy to spare my life. Lu Qingqing's words made the Emperor shocked, his body became stiff. He clenched his fists tightly, and his breathing grew heavy as if he could not believe that Lu Qingqing would do this kind of thing. He always had a good feeling about Lu Qingqing. She was an excellent girl and the young lady of a noble family. Besides, the Lu family was deeply respected by him. Otherwise, he would not have let Qing'er marry Lu Qingqing as a concubine. However, Lu Qingqing, to get Qing'er, could do this kind of thing and cause Qing'er to be poisoned and fall unconscious. And she framed others. Slap. He raised his hand and slapped Lu Qingqing's face fiercely. The slap made half of Lu Qingqing's face red. She fell to the ground, and there was a trail of blood on the corner of her lips. Her gaze was full of panic. She loved Murong Qing too much. Was it wrong to love someone? She could only blame Sister Gu. She had no enemies, so why would Sister Gu frame her? The Empress' lips trembled slightly. She covered her lips with her hands, and tears flowed down to her fingers. Sister Gu, why would she do that? Lu Qingqing, is it that you wanted to harm Qing'er, but because there was no one to take the blame, so you have framed Sister Gu? It must be you. She rushed toward Lu Qingqing angrily, clutching her lapel tightly. Why did you do this? I adored you so much and treated you well. But why would you want to harm Qing'er like this? Why? Lu Qingqing closed her eyes in deep pain. Her body was shaking, and after a few seconds, she opened her eyes, staring at the Empress standing before her. Empress, what I said this time is all true. Sister Gu is dishonest. I have no reason to plot against the prince. I just want to be his woman, Lu Qingqing. The Emperor trembled with anger. Until now, Lu Qingqing still did not understand what was wrong with her actions. Me for extra chapters. He stepped forward and grabbed Lu Qingqing's lapel, his anger raged. You still dare to be so reckless. You have ill intentions toward Qing'er. Drugging to get him is a fault, regardless of whether you used medicine or poison. This is all your fault that he had become like this. If it's not because of your intention, why would you give people the opportunity to take advantage of you? Lu Qingqing's lips were pale. The emperor was right. It was all her fault. Because of her, she had allowed someone to take advantage of the situation. It was because of her that the prince was unconscious. If she could be given another chance, she would not do that again. She would rely on her ability to win his heart. Mother, Nan Qiyu looked up at Feng Ruqing unblinkingly. Murong Qing has helped me before, so you need to save him. Feng Ruqing withdrew her gaze and nodded indifferently. Fine. She would never refuse Nan Kai's request. Therefore, she took out a piece of spirit herb and handed it to Ah Bao. Take it. Ah Bao stood up and took the spirit herb. It then turned toward the door of the room. The whole courtyard was quiet since Nan Qiyu said that. The emperor opened his mouth, wanting to say something but could not seem to say it out loud. Remorse, guilt, panic, countless emotions gushed out, like the flood. He never thought that after he had treated this girl like this, she would still want to save Murong Qing. Murong Qing helped me, so I tried to save him, but, Nan Qiyu sneered, Lu Qingqing set me up, and you wanted to make a move on me. Now that my mother is here, this matter must be settled between us. Feng Ruqing frowned and looked at those people in front of her coldly. There was a murderous intent in her eyes. The emperor's face was pale. His hands on the sides trembled a little. He clenched his fists tightly as if it could calm his trembling heart. But, the expression on his face still showed the fear he had. I don't want to see Chongqing Kingdom in Sangyu mainland anymore. A single sentence had determined the fate of Chongqing Kingdom. The emperor's face turned paler, trembling. Princess Ruqing, it was my fault. I did not know that Maiden Xia Xia is your daughter. I beg you, for the sake of Qing'er, let Chongqing Kingdom go this time. I will severely punish Lu Qingqing to appease Maiden Xia Xia of her anger. Feng Ruqing looked down at the emperor expressionlessly. I really doubt, based on the person you are, that you should take the emperor's seat. The emperor trembled. He knew that this time, Feng Ruqing would not easily let him go. But, Feng Ruqing glanced at Lu Qingqing coldly. I also want to know who is the real person who framed Xia Xia. At that moment, someone had already gone to get Sister Gu over. After seeing the guards rushing into the palace, Sister Gu already knew that the cat was out of the bag. She was trembling all the way in, and after seeing Lu Qingqing kneeling, her heart grew even colder. Me for extra chapters. Sister Gu, the emperor growled. Confess it. Did you give the medicine to Lu Qingqing? Sister Gu trembled with fear and knelt, tears flowing from her eyes as she fiercely kowtowed. Emperor, spare my life. Please spare my life. This one sentence made the emperor understand everything. He slowly closed his eyes, and his whole body trembled. He had never felt threatened by anyone for so many years. But now, Lu Qingqing, together with Sister Gu, had almost brought his entire Chongqing kingdom down. Sister Gu, why do you want to harm Qing'er? The emperor opened his eyes and asked angrily. Sister Gu bit her lip hard and subconsciously looked at the empress, then quickly withdrew her gaze. The prince once punished me severely. I have been holding a grudge since, wanting to take revenge on him. Back then, she was teaching a palace servant a lesson when Murong Qing saw her, and as a result, Murong Qing had helped that servant and placed the blame on her. That was a fact, and everyone in the entire palace knew about it. Even though Sister Gu thought she had hidden that glance well, Feng Ruqing had caught it. Enriching smiled coldly. She slowly walked toward Sister Gu. Enriching raised her hand and grabbed her up from the ground, asking expressionlessly, "Tell me, who is the mastermind behind this?" Usually, she did not care much about this kind of idle matter. However, this time, it involved Xia, so she had to see an end to this. Sister Gu panicked. She gritted her teeth and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't know?" Enriching sneered, "I have the spirit herb here that can make your intestines rot. I wonder if you would like to try it." Hearing these words, Sister Gu's body trembled. She gritted her teeth and continued, "There is no mastermind. It is my work alone." Her whole family, their lives, were in the Empress' hands, so she could never admit it. The Empress' face was pale, and she laughed wryly. "Princess Ruching, look here. This is just a servant's revenge. Why would you think there is a mastermind behind it?" Ruching sneered and looked at the Empress. "The one in bed in the room is surely not your son, but I do feel that you do not care even the slightest about the real culprit. Instead, you are bent on blaming this old servant." The Empress' face changed dramatically, and she clenched her fists tightly. Why? When everything was doing fine, Xia turns out to be Ruching's daughter. If she hadn't appeared, there wouldn't have been so much trouble going on, let alone someone to save Qing. The Emperor snapped and laughed. "She's Qing's aunt. She has always treated Qing like her son. How could she not care about him? I am increasingly suspicious of how you became the Emperor." Nan Xian turned to the Emperor expressionlessly. "Since you are not afraid of death or pain, I am sure that is because someone has threatened you. Go and arrest all the family members of this old servant. I would like to see if she will tell the truth then. The person who could make someone so unafraid of life and death must be some matter in question. But just what was making her not even afraid of death? Unless the one being held was her loved one, only a loved one could make a person admit to all her sins, regardless of life and death." As expected, after hearing Ruching's words, Sister Gu's face turned pale. She panicked, and her whole body trembled. The Empress' face also changed dramatically. She bit her lip hard, not saying a word, as if she was thinking of how to get out of this trouble. "If you tell the truth now," Ruching lowered her gaze and looked at Sister Gu. "I can guarantee that your loved ones will not be harmed in the slightest." Ever since the Empress had told the Emperor about Ruching, Sister Gu knew that person's identity. Although she did not know why this person would care about this matter, she understood that she was the only one who could save her loved ones today. Me for extra chapters. My grandson and my children are all in the Empress' hands. It was the Empress who told me to do this. Otherwise, she would capture and kill my beloved ones. Please, save them. I will tell you everything. Boom. These words were like a thunderbolt from a clear sky landing on one's head. The Emperor turned to the pale Empress, shocked, his eyes were filled with disbelief. "Empress, is what Sister Gu said true?" His breathing grew heavy as if without taking a breath, he could feel his heart hurting badly. From the beginning till the end, he had never doubted the Empress. The Empress was able to ascend to this position because the late Empress trusted her. It was hard for him to believe it. Yet, somehow, it was her. The Empress fell to the ground, tears weeping down. "Emperor, I didn't do it. It's all Sister Gu's nonsense. She is falsely accusing me. I have always treated Qing'er like my own son. How could I do such a thing?" The Emperor closed his eyes. He wished all of these were only a misunderstanding. After all, he had trusted her too much. He did not believe the Empress would really be so tricky and cunning. However, Sister Gu was the servant that the Empress brought into the palace back then. She did not have any reason to accuse her. Empress, how will you defend yourself? The Emperor opened his eyes and asked expressionlessly. The Empress fell weakly to the ground. She shook her head and said, Emperor, it really wasn't me. I'm innocent, she must not admit it. If she did, she would definitely not be able to save her life anymore. The Emperor would not spare her. Mother, Nan Qiyu turned to Feng Ruqing. Murong Qing's body has been weak since he was a child. He often gets sick. The people of Chongqing Kingdom said that Flower King could help him to improve his physique. Is it really possible? Feng Ruqing froze for a moment and shook his head. Flower King surely can strengthen the body, but only for the healthy. If the physique is already weak, it will only make him even weaker. The Emperor, who was already filled with disappointment, stiffened once again after hearing these words. Endless anger surged to his heart as he gritted his teeth and said, Go and bring the state preceptor to me. The state preceptor of Chongqing Kingdom was none other than an older man who was busily thinking about dealing with Flower King. He was already worried then. Who knew that the Emperor would suddenly send an order for him to go to Fourth Prince Manor? His heart thumped, and he could sense that something bad had happened. So, he was apprehensive all the way there, and when he saw the courtyard was full of people, especially the Empress who was kneeling on the ground, he panicked even more. Emperor! Emperor, tell me! The Emperor stormed. Why did you deceive Qing'er and told him that Flower King could cure his illness and trick him into going to that savage land? The state preceptor was so frightened that his legs went limp, and he fell to his knees, crying, Emperor, spare my life. The Empress heard that Flower King was guarded by the Wolf King and wanted to trick Fourth Prince to go there so that he would be buried in the wolf's belly. The Empress threatened me, and I did not dare to disobey her. I am begging you to spare my life. Every word spoken by the state preceptor made the Emperor's heart sink even more and felt even a little hurt. He suddenly thought of those times when the Empress felt uneasy about Qing'er and wanted to go there to find him. The Empress' concern had even touched him. Now that he thought about it, she probably wanted to go there just to collect Qing'er's dead body. Ridiculous. Empress, what else do you have to say now? The Emperor's gaze was cold and stern as he looked at the Empress with eyes filled with murderous intent. Me for extra chapters. So, in the end, she chose Lu Qingqing. Lu Qingqing lowered her gaze, and her face was pale. Only now did she understand that the reason the Empress allowed her to stay in the prince's manor. It was all a conspiracy. It was ridiculous for her to have thought that the Empress was treating her sincerely. Guard, seize the Empress. The Emperor growled, his eyes were filled with rage. Several guards came forward at the Emperor's order, grabbed the Empress' arms, and took her away. The Empress did not struggle at all. She lowered her gaze that was full of despair. After the Empress was dragged down, the Emperor looked at Nan Qiyu, trembling. Maiden Xia Xia, just now Feng Ruqing pulled Nan Qiyu to her side and looked down. Chongqing Kingdom will be removed from the mainland. All the cities of Chongqing Kingdom will merge to other places. That single sentence had determined the end of Chongqing Kingdom. The Emperor's body felt weak. He seemed desperate as he gradually fell to the ground. That endless remorse and anger surged to his heart, causing his body to tremble. This is all Empress' fault. Everything happened because of her. That bitch deserves to die. Xia Xia, let's go home. Feng Ruqing held Xia Xia's hands and smiled gently. Xia Xia paused and looked back at Nan Ming. The young man stood under the sun, gazing at Xia Xia. His eyes were filled with warmth. This light was as brilliant as the sun, and it could warm others' hearts. Feng Ruqing followed her gaze and saw the young man standing at the back. She frowned and turned to the young girl in front of her. Her eyebrows were slightly raised. Do you have anything to say? Oh, Nan Qiyu paused and asked, can I raise him? Feng Ruqing, Nan Xian, and Nan Ming were all speechless. Everyone was confused when she said that. She wants to raise a man. Me for extra chapters. However, looking at the bright smile upon the little girl's face, Feng Ruqing did not have the heart to reject her request. She looked up at Nan Ming. This young man is indeed good-looking. No wonder Xia is so fond of him. But, Feng Ruqing smirked. Wolf. Emichim, Nan Ming answered faintly, and his gaze was fixed upon Xia. The light in those eyes was as gentle as water, as if it could drown a person to death without any struggle. Oh, Feng Ruqing nodded. Then, let's go back together. She was too old to interfere, and the little girl was old enough and had reached the age of understanding romantic love. Nan Xian glanced at Nan Ming coldly, a light flashed in his eyes. If this little girl has a husband, she will not pester Qing'er again later. Let's go home. She had finally found Xia. Feng Ruqing stretched her back lazily. She then slowly turned to the girl still kneeling on the ground, Lu Qingqing. She smirked. We seem to have forgotten that there is another one to settle. This girl wanted to frame Xia. How could I have forgotten about her? Lu Qingqing's face was pale, and her body trembled lightly. She was about to faint, but she held her body upright. Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. I'm not interested in your imperial family's internal conflicts. But you should not have framed my daughter. Based on this alone, Chongqing Kingdom also has no reason to exist. That made the emperor react and dart toward Lu Qingqing, slapping her fiercely across the face. His expression seemed to burn with anger. Lu Qingqing, it's all your fault. If it weren't for what you have done, I wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. Chongqing Kingdom wouldn't have fallen into other people's hands. Lu Qingqing froze on the ground after the emperor had slapped her fiercely. She no longer cared about the pain, her eyes were full of despair. Nan Qiyu did not turn back. She did not even bother to glance at Murong Qing when she walked away with Feng Ruqing. Nan Ming glanced at the emperor coldly for the last time before leaving the courtyard. They arrived in Luyun Kingdom 2 days after leaving Chongqing Kingdom. Tang Yin stood at the entrance, waiting anxiously. Her eyes lit up when she saw those familiar figures approaching her. However, just as she was about to greet them, she found a young man following Nan Qiyu. The young man was extremely beautiful and charming, with a faint smile on his lips, and his gaze was fixed upon Nan Qiyu. Tang Yin was stunned. Her eyes widened, surprised at the two who walked together from a distance. What's happening here? Xia left alone but returned with a young man. I don't know how many people will be sad in the future. Since Xia grew up, Princess Manor had long queues of marriage proposals. Now, if she had brought back someone else, Tang Yin did not know how many hearts would be broken. Tang Yin shivered and hurriedly left. I must tell Feng Tianwu about them. At least, he is mentally prepared that Xia has brought back a man. Howl. The snow wolf howled and pounced toward Xia happily. When Xia left, the wolf was really bored. Meanwhile, Feng Ruqing was only focused on Nan Xian and ignored its existence. Me for extra chapters. When it saw that Xia had come back, it was excited, and a smile appeared in its eyes. However, just when it was about to pounce on Xia, a pair of cold eyes suddenly glanced at it from the side, scaring him and making him shiver. It then noticed that Xia was followed by a young man. The young man's eyes were domineering, and his expressionless eyes looked at him coldly. The frosty color in his eyes made the snow wolf shiver and subconsciously take a few steps back. Perhaps the Wolf King's majestic aura was too apparent to the wolf, causing it not to dare to come any closer. It stared at him pitifully. Feng Ruching has Nan Xian, and now Xia Xia also has a man by her side. No one needs me anymore, and I might be kicked out of Princess Manor in the future. Xia Xia, you look tired. Go back to your room and rest. Feng Ruching touched Xia Xia's little head, smiling tenderly. Then, she looked up at Nan Ming. And you, there is a room next to Xia Xia's that is empty, Nan Xian replied expressionlessly. Feng Ruching was stunned and amazed. She turned to look at Nan Xian. Nan Xian lowered his gaze at Feng Ruching and smiled. It seems that Xia Xia likes him a lot. Why not allow them to be close so that he can protect Xia Xia? Feng Ruching nodded. Oh, that's good. He can sleep in the room next to Xia Xia. Decades ago, he was severely injured in a battle with this guy. When he met Nan Qiyu back then, he happened to be recovering from his injuries. Now, his injuries were almost recovered. Even if this guy found him, he would not be afraid. Moreover, now, he already had someone that he wanted to devote his life to and protect. The man in red laughed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. I would like to see what power you have nowadays. You lost to me back then, and now you will lose to me as well. The man turned into a strobe of red light, and in a flash, he was right before the Wolf King. There was an eerie glow in that man's eyes that seemed to give chills to the soul. The young man raised his hand, and his eyes were cold. Luyun Kingdom, in the street, Nan Qiyu seemed to become increasingly anxious. For some reason, she kept feeling uneasy and felt as if something would happen to the Wolf King. The silver snake slithering in front of her was also very anxious. As of just now, Nan Ming was way too fast. It could not catch up or find where he went. Ah Yin, have you found Ah Ming or not? Nan Kai's face was red. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she almost cried. The silver snake shook its head. King left so fast because he wanted to lure that guy away and didn't want to involve you. So, he wouldn't let us find out where he went. Then, will Ah Ming be in danger? Nan Kai's heart clenched, and her gaze was full of worry. The silver snake pondered for a moment. There is something that the Fox King wants from the Wolf King. Back then, the Fox King had injured the Wolf King, and he is not fully recovered even after so many years have passed. Spirit herbs and treatment are useless. But if he is completely recovered from his injuries, perhaps he would still be able to fight. But now, the implication for that had caused his situation to be perilous. Nan Qiyu pursed her lips and clenched her fists tightly. Her small face was a little pale. Go and inform my parents that I will go to find him. Little princess, I will find him. At this moment, the young girl's face was lit with determination. It was enough to move people's hearts. The silver snake looked at Nan Qiyu, turned around, and walked back to Princess Manor. Me for extra chapters. Nan Qiyu ran toward the city gate without looking back. She always felt as if she had seen Ah Ming from a long, long time ago. At that time, it seemed that Ah Ming had protected her, so, this time, no matter what, she had to find him. No one can hurt Ah Ming. Boom! A powerful force came crashing down, causing Nan Ming to take a few steps back. A mouthful of blood gushed out of his throat, but he held it back hard. He could taste something fishy and odd. It made him feel uncomfortable. The man in red frowned and sneered. You have not recovered from your injuries, and you are trying to trick me. You are now deliberately showing up. You were trying to lure me here, right? Are you hiding something in that small kingdom? The young man looked up at the man in red coldly. He smirked. I said, I won't lose again this time. Nan Chiyu was still waiting for him at home. That little girl loved to cry until her nose turned red. What if she cried if she knew that he would not come back? How could he let her shed any tears at all? Perhaps, by thinking of the little girl who was waiting for him at home, his eyes were suddenly filled with determination, and the smile dancing upon his lips grew warmer. The man in red frowned. He felt that there was something wrong with the current Wolf King. However, he did not think much about it. Sneering, he flew through the air and instantly landed in front of the Wolf King. He held a powerful, angry flame in his palm and blasted it at the Wolf King. Facing such strong force, the Wolf King did not retreat. Instead, he met the man in red. This battle shook the earth, mountains, and even the surrounding trees at night, ignited by the flame. Nan Ming's eyes were filled with a heavy gaze. His handsome face looked even more impressive against the flames. Perhaps the injury had not yet fully recovered. The fishy and odd taste returned to his mouth, but Nan Ming endured it. He then swiftly rushed toward the man in red. They were both very fast. So fast that only the two residual shadows could be seen in the air. Boom! Suddenly, the man in red was like lightning, breaking through layers of obstacles and instantly reaching him. His palm carried a mighty force that landed fiercely upon the young man's body. He retreated, and a trace of blood hung on from the corner of his lips. Seeing Nan Ming's strong appearance, the man in red smiled coldly. You have not recovered from your injuries. Wolf King, you are not my opponent. Hand over the ancient box. The young man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He smirked. That is the Wolf clan's greatest treasure, and I will never hand it over to you. Rumor had it that the power within this ancient box was so strong that it could cause a disaster if it were really taken away by him. Since that's the case, then I can only get it by killing you. Whoosh! He was like the wind as he turned into a ray of light. In a flash, he was once again in front of the young man. The young man slowly closed his eyes. The little girl's delicate and beautiful face emerged in his mind, and slowly, he opened his eyes determinedly to look at the man in red. The sky was still dark just now, but unknowingly, it was now dawn. The surrounding trees were all destroyed and had turned into ruin as if they had just been burned. Me for extra chapters. Even the sky reflected red light. He did not know how much time had passed, yet the young man felt that his strength gradually decreased. He could no longer hold on as strongly as before. Once again, he spurted a mouthful of blood, staining the ground red. Even the color of his blood was so stunning. The man in red frowned, somewhat surprised. If the Wolf King's strength had recovered, it would indeed be difficult to deal with him. However, he still hadn't recovered from his injury, so he should not be as strong as he once was. But, the fact that the Wolf King could hold out until now really left him amazed. If the Wolf King was not so persistent in hiding the ancient box, perhaps, they might have become good friends now. It was a pity. The man in red looked at the young man on the ground coldly. Wolf King, do you have anything to say? You have been hiding from me for so many years, and now finally, you are not going to continue to hide. Nan Ming wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smirked. He did not say anything as he rushed toward the man in red again. The man in red focused all his power on his hand, and with a boom, that force landed on the young man's chest. The young man fell to the ground as a steady stream of blood flowed from his mouth. However, he was calm. He looked at the imperial city of Luyun Kingdom from not far away with regret in his eyes. Sorry, Xia Xia. I can no longer accompany you in this life. But I have no regrets meeting you. The man in red walked toward the young man expressionlessly. He looked down at him and said, "You have been hiding from me for so many years. Every time I almost catch up to you, you escape. So this time, why did you expose yourself?" Nan Ming lowered his head, and a smile appeared on his lips. Why? Probably because she was the princess of Luyun Kingdom. The people in that city were all her people. Every time she mentioned Luyun Kingdom, there was a gentle light in her eyes. The entire Luyun Kingdom would descend into a living nightmare if he allowed the man in red into Luyun Kingdom. Even if Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian could subdue him, countless people would suffer from this. The reason why he was hiding that box was because it was given to him by someone else. He had promised that person to keep it safe, and he would keep his promise. He was unwilling to drag anyone down because he did not want the light in her eyes to disappear. He did not want any danger to befall the kingdom, which she wanted to guard. Even if it would cost him his life. "Because I'm tired of hiding," Nan Ming said coldly. "As for the ancient box that you're looking for, I've already destroyed it, and I never told you about it all these years because I just wanted to watch you go crazy over it." The smile on his lips was tinged with coldness, but it caused the man in red to burst into rage. "What did you say?" This ancient box, which the 9th emperor left back then, had layers of seals on it, so the world thought that this ancient box must contain a mighty power. It was unfortunate that the seal was difficult to break. Since the seal was so powerful, how did the Wolf King manage to destroy it? Me for extra chapters. Do you think I would believe your words? You must be keeping it somewhere. I just need to kill you, and then, I will be able to find it. The man in red laughed coldly, bouncing up to Nan Ming. Nan Ming gradually closed his eyes. He sat on the ground. He was as handsome as a god in his silver robe. However, at this moment, a voice came from behind him, causing his body to stiffen, and his initially calm expression suddenly turned into one of panic. "Ah Ming." The voice was filled with anxiety and urgency. When Nan Ming turned his head, he saw the girl running toward him from the back. She was anxious that her face was pale and covered in sweat. There was a hint of eagerness in her eyebrows. The man in red saw the panic in the Wolf King's eyes. He stopped and looked at the little girl approaching them. He smirked. "You came here to stop me because of this girl, right?" Nan Ming did not answer the man. His gaze was focused upon Nan Qiyu, and even his voice carried an uncontrollable shock. "Xia Xia, what are you doing here?" Perhaps his tone was too harsh, causing Xia Xia to freeze for a moment, her tears almost falling. "I came to look for you." Ever since he met Nan Qiyu, this young man had always been gentle, never raising his voice at her. This was the only time he did. Seeing that Nan Qiyu was about to cry, Nan Ming panicked. He hurriedly used his sleeve to wipe away her tears as regret and guilt filled his gaze. "I'm sorry Xia Xia, I didn't mean to." He was too anxious before that he had accidentally raised his voice a little. Xia Xia's eyes were slightly red. She stood up, stretched her arms, and stood in front of Nan Ming. She tilted her head and looked at the man in red standing before her. No one can bully Ah Ming. Only she could bully him, and no one else could. Looking at the small figure of that little girl in front of him, Nan Ming's heart trembled violently. He grabbed Xia Xia's arm and said, "Go. You must go, quickly." Xia Xia did not say anything. She had a face full of stubbornness as she continued standing in front of him. The man in red looked at Nan Ming, then looked at Xia Xia, and suddenly laughed out loud. "Wolf King, I didn't expect you to have a woman. When countless women wanted to throw themselves at you, do you remember how you treated them? You also said at the beginning that women are too soft, and you have always disliked them. You only like to be alone. But now, you are going to this extent for a little crybaby and even got out of your way to lure me and expose yourself. Ha ha ha. He had never thought that this Wolf King would one day go to such an extent for a little human girl. He had never expected the Wolf King to also fall in love with a human. Since that was the case, he narrowed his eyes and smiled coldly, hand over the ancient box. Otherwise, I will kill this little girl. Nan Ming stood up. Although his steps were a little shaky, his expression was firm. Xia Xia, you need to leave this place immediately. Don't look back, go. Nan Qiyu shook his head. No, I can't leave you behind. Xia Xia. Nan Kai's eyes got even redder. You're mean to me again. As soon as she cried, Nan Ming was a bit overwhelmed, and even the firmness just now was forgotten as he scrambled to wipe her tears. Nan Qiyu pouted. She turned and faced the man in red. The tears in her eyes miraculously disappeared, and her small face turned cold. Me for extra chapters. You're the one who has been bullying Ah Ming all these years. The man in red laughed demonically. Little girl, aren't you afraid? Why should I be afraid of you? Nan Qiyu raised her small face. When I brought Ah Ming back to raise him, I had already made up my mind that I would not abandon him. So I will not leave. Brought back to raise. The man in red laughed out loud. Wolf King, so this girl is raising you as a pet. I have never thought that this day would come for you. Nan Ming's handsome face remained expressionless, and his whole body was shrouded in a cold aura. I was willingly raised by her. Humph. The man in red snorted coldly. It seems that you are very sincere about this girl. Now that she has sent herself to me, I don't have to worry about you not handing over the ancient box. With a flash, the man in red was already in front of Nan Qiyu. His fingers were sharp as he grabbed Nan Kai's neck. Xia Xia. Nan Ming looked panicked and hurriedly stepped forward to pull Nan Kai's arm and into his arms. That palm landed on Nan Ming's back sharply as it directly cut his skin. Fresh blood seeped from his back, staining his robe red. Looking at the blood on Nan Ming's back, Nan Kai's heart felt fiercely stung. It seemed that, at some point, she was once protected like this. However, that seemed like way too long ago, and she could not remember it. Just as Nan Kai's heart was pumping with pain, it was just in time for her to see the man in red appear again. This time, she did not give Nan Ming another chance to protect her. She pushed him away with one hand. Boom! When the man in red's hand was about to fall upon Nan Kai's body, a light surged from her surroundings, forming a barrier in front of her and making the man in red bounce away. The man in red was surprised. He frowned and looked at Nan Qiyu hesitantly. This girl is not as simple as she seems, in the streets of the imperial city. Feng Ruqing stopped in her tracks. She looked up at where the light just passed in front of her, and her face suddenly fell. I have found you, Xia Xia. When Xia Xia was thrown to the savage land by Nan Xian, she had given Xia Xia the amulet of protection. And now, the amulet worked. She was able to find her whereabouts, however, this amulet of protection was only effective once. So she must get to Xia Xia as soon as possible. Nan Xian, let's go. I want to see who dares to touch my daughter in my Luyuan kingdom. A cold light flashed in her eyes, and her cold smile grew wider. At the top of a hill, Nan Qiyu opened her eyes. She looked at the man in red before she walked to Nan Ming's side and helped him up from the ground. The man in red looked at the jade pendant that fell on the ground and smiled coldly. This jade pendant should be your amulet. Now that it is broken. Little girl, let's see how you will still be able to hide from me. Nan Chiyu pursed her lips. Who told you that this amulet only has the effect of protecting me? The reason she had deliberately let the amulet work was to show her mother where they were. It would not take long for her mother to find them, and by then, it would definitely be the end of this guy. Xia Xia, hide behind me later. Nan Ming stood up straight. He was still staggering a little, but he was a lot more stable than just now. Ah Ming, me for extra chapters. Believe me. It will be fine. Both you and me. Nan Ming smiled and touched Nan Kai's head as he gazed at her gently. Now, he was also no longer an ordinary person like he was. Xia Xia came, then no matter what, he would protect her and never let her be in harm. Nan Ming's body gradually changed in the moonlight, and in a moment, a silver wolf stood under the moon. This wolf was extremely beautiful, stunning others. It was as fast as a gust of wind. Nan Chiyu froze, looking at the wolf. An image gradually appeared in her mind. Deep in the mountains, the little girl was being chased after to be killed, and a wolf came and saved the little girl from those people. This image was a little blurry before, but in the end, it became clear, making Nan Kai's body stiffen slightly. Big doggy. These words involuntarily came out of Nan Kai's mouth, making her eyes moist. The Wolf King subconsciously stopped for a moment, but he did not turn back and went toward the man at the fastest speed. He promised her that he would protect her, so he was bound to do it. Just like 10 years ago, he returned Xia Xia to her parents, and 10 years later, he was still able to bring her back safely. A wolf growled, shaking the sky and earth. The deserted forest shook, and the birds of prey that had been affected by the battle were also leaving in a hurry, not daring to continue to stay in the forest. The Wolf King did not turn back, and he did not even look at Nan Chiyu. He knew that the little girl behind him was the one he needed to devote his life to protect. So, he put his mind on the battle before him. The man in red saw that Nan Ming was so protective of the girl. The smile in his eyes got even colder. He had never thought that the Wolf King would be like that. Before this, he was heartless and ruthless. But now, he was so attentive to this little girl. Especially when the little girl was crying just now, the panic in the Wolf King's eyes was so obvious. Wolf King. The man in red faced the Wolf King who was coming toward him and smirked. You had no weakness at all before. But now, you have a huge weakness, that is this little girl. If I want to deal with you now, it is easier than ever. Nan Ming looked up at the man in red. He then smiled coldly, so cold that it made people shudder. You're wrong. I did not gain a weakness from having her. In fact, I have no weakness anymore. The man in red frowned, and the smile in his eyes was somewhat contemptuous, obviously unconcerned by the Wolf King's words. Because, Nan Ming finally turned back and looked at the little girl behind him. His smile was gentle, without the coldness like when he faced the man in red. At last, I have someone I want to protect, and I will definitely sacrifice everything to protect her. I will never let myself be defeated by you once again, let alone fall for your treacherous schemes. The man in red did not speak more. He raised his hand, and a long sword appeared out of thin air. He held it tightly in his hand. Immediately, he rushed toward Nan Chiyu, who stood behind Nan Ming. He was as fast as a gust of wind, with a cold light in his eyes and voice stiff enough to make people's bones shiver. Then, I want to see whether she is your weakness or what you said. Just at the moment when the man in red was about to reach Nan Chiyu, Nan Ming moved, and he was already in front of her. His silvery fur, under this moon, carried a dazzling light. At that moment, it made Nan Kai's heart tremble. Me for extra chapters. The Wolf King bit down on the man in red sword, and with one fierce push, he bit down on half of the blade. The man in red's eyes narrowed, and the cold smile on his lips widened. He simply dropped the sword, and swiftly, once again rushed toward Nan Chiyu. However, every time he wanted to get close to Nan Chiyu, he was stopped by Nan Ming. The wolf's power had also increased a lot, and he was as fast as lightning. Nan Kai's gaze was always fixed upon Nan Ming. The scene in front of her was so familiar that her eyes were red, unblinking. It seemed that when it came to Nan Ming, she could no longer look at anyone else. The man in red was forced back several times. The cold smile on his face finally disappeared, and his face darkened as he looked at Nan Ming. Nan Ming, you think this can stop me? Since she has become your weakness, she will certainly be with you all the time, and I will always find the opportunity to destroy both of you. Indeed, Nan Ming could not always be protecting her. Due to that, he could always find the opportunity to kill him. The man in red smirked when he thought of this, and this time he did not continue to approach Nan Chiyu, but he faced Nan Ming instead. At the moment, the man's aura strengthened steeply. It was colder and heavier than just a few moments ago, which made the sky seem quite gloomy. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.